Hi, my name is Mike Holmes. I'm a retired general from the U.S. Air Force. I'm the chairman of the board of the Air Force Historical Foundation, and I'm recording this video as part of the Foundation's 9/12 project. You know, for a large group of airmen, many of the airmen that I served with, their career in the Air Force was shaped by the events that happened on 9/11 and everything that happened afterward. And you can make the case that for about 20 years, from 9/11 until the United States withdrew its forces from Afghanistan, everything we did was 9/12. It was what are we going to do the day after 9/11 happened. And that's why we have our project and why we call it 9/12. We hope to capture the things that happened to our airmen, the things they did, and to make an archive of oral histories that'll be available to people in the future to go back and learn about it. So thanks for joining us. My experience in Afghanistan started on 9/11. I was in the Pentagon on 9/11. I was about as far across the building as you could be, but I was the new Lieutenant Colonel Select in charge of the Air Force Skunk Works, which did strategy, doctrine, and concepts. And we made our way out of the building. We went back home. When we came back to work the next day, we took our office, the Skunks, and Checkmate, and we combined them. We split into two shifts, and we worked shift operations every day from 9/12 through Christmas Eve of that year. And we ran planning. We supported the crisis action team that was in the basement of the Pentagon that ran Air Force preparations and planning for operations against Afghanistan, supported AFCENT's efforts to do that, and worked nights every night through that. And that took us through the invasion of Afghanistan the first time and the overthrow of the Taliban. And then our organization was disbanded, and we went back to our regular duties of helping plan for the future of the Air Force. I came back to Afghanistan again as a member of the Council of Colonels that were working for Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Peter Pace, to help him and the Joint Chiefs think about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I graduated as the wing commander of the 4th Tactical Fighter Wing, the 4th Fighter Wing down at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. I came to the Pentagon in the summer of '06 and went downstairs and joined that group of about a dozen colonels or Navy captains, all coming out of command. And we worked directly for the chairman, Mike Rogers. Navy Captain Mike Rogers and I ran the group. We spent about 6 months helping the Joint Chiefs think about the war in Iraq as the President and the National Security Council were trying to decide what to do. We were the first people to tell them that it wasn't going well and we were going to have to reevaluate our strategy there. And then after the end of that project, we spent about 6 months looking at Afghanistan and Pakistan and making recommendations on what our action should be there. And then when I finished that tour, I was assigned to Pacific Air Forces as their 589, their plans, programs, and international affairs. I went there 4th of July weekend in '07, and by Thanksgiving of '07, I was back in the United States. So I had PCS there as a colonel, Brigadier General Select, and shortly after I got there, General North, the commander of 9th Air Force and AFCENT, asked me if I was interested in going to the AFCENT AOR to be the wing commander of Bagram for a year. And my answer was absolutely. General Hester was my boss at PACAF. He called me. I was on a temporary duty trip. Time zones were mixed up. He woke me up in the middle of the night and said, you know, I wasn't going to let you go. You just got here. We need you. But I kept thinking that if I had the chance to go, I'd want to go. So if you want to go, I'll let you. I said, I want to go. He said, are you sure? Yes. And so he let me go. And so we turned around and they sent me back to the Pentagon and assigned me as a special assistant into XOX, I think. And that was so I could be with my family for the training period that it took to get ready to go be the wing commander. Normally those wings change out in the summertime, sometime June, July, or August. But the guy I was going to relieve, Brigadier General Bill Hyatt, had been selected to be the military assistant to the Deputy SecDef. And SecDef wanted him back in March or April. And so we looked at my training. I went down to Seymour and got checked out in the Strike Eagle again. And it had been, a year and a half since I'd flown the airplane in a senior officer course. and then we waived the culture and language training. I went down to AFCENT for the training that they prepared to new command teams, and there's a giant thunderstorm coming in. I told General North I'd rather not spend my last night in the United States before I go to Afghanistan in the Columbia, South Carolina airport. He agreed, so I left a day early and went home to spend that night with Sarah and Wade. And then took off, went commercial to Qatar. And at Qatar, we were going to make up the training I had. About an afternoon into that of jet lagged and trying to do my best to pay attention, the guys there said, "Wouldn't you rather just go ahead to Afghanistan?" I said yes. So I went straight into Afghanistan. Bill Hyatt and I had about maybe 36 hours of overlap, maybe not quite that much. He had a whiteboard with all the things he wanted to talk to me about. We walked through those topics. He drove me around the base, and then we looked at each other like, "What are you still doing here?" And he looked at, he said, "I'd leave if I could." General North flew in and officiated a change of command, and there I was at Bagram in March of '08, just 6 months after I found that I was going and after I left Hickam. But happy to be there. I arrived, and the 82nd Airborne was in command of Regional Command East. And Regional Command East was a joint task force that oversaw really all the operations in Afghanistan at that time. There was a small contingent of forces there built around kind of one division and some international elements, and they were in charge of the whole country. Over the time our tour lasted, they reverted to just being RC East, and NATO stood up an additional headquarters to run the country. But when I got there, it was the 82nd with RC East. I was a colonel, General Select, waiting to be for a pin-on date. Before I left, when I found that I was going, I asked the Journal Officer Management Office, I said, "Look, I can do whatever you want on the pin-on. I'd just like to do it before I get over there so my family can attend." And of course, I got orders that said, be in Afghanistan not later than, the 8th of March, and you can't pin on Brigadier General any earlier than the 12th of March. I'm making up those dates, but it was something like that. So shortly after I got there, we had a pin-on. Major General Forsyth, the deputy CFAC, flew down to officiate at the pin-on. The officers of the 82nd were there to be a part of it, and I was glad to get that done before they swapped out. So a month later, after I'd had a chance to kind of get my feet on the ground and learn their processes and my processes and what we did, they were replaced by the 101st, and I spent the rest of the 13 and a half months working with the 101st Airborne's command team. So I was the wing commander at Bagram of the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing. I was what the Army referred to as the ACE, the Air Coordinating Element, but AFCENT didn't recognize that. But they liked having somebody to turn to instead of going to Qatar to get answers. And then I had ADCON and OPCON of all the airmen in Afghanistan, with the exception of the ones that were on the NATO headquarters. And so all the airmen across Afghanistan, although some of them were under the tactical control or take-on of other organizations, they were all under our ADCON. I was the senior airfield authority at Bagram, which was a doctrinal term kind of made up for this situation that meant for all airfield operations, I was responsible and in charge outside the perimeter of the airfield. Between the perimeter of the airfield and the outer perimeter of the base belonged to the 101st and the garrison commander that they brought along. The missions that we were doing in the wing were close air support with A-10s and F-15Es. And at one point we had 24 A-10s and I think 30 or 32 F-15Es there during the year. We had MQ-9s down at Kandahar that were also doing armed overwatch, a combination of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and close air support. We were flying a network connector that linked Link 16 together all around the country that was airborne, called the Bacon, on a Bombardier business jet out of Kandahar. We were flying tactical airlift in C-130s. We were doing jamming operations or electronic warfare to counter improvised explosive devices with EC-130 Compass Call and some other variants of the EC-130. The Navy had some EA-6Bs there that were also doing that mission. And while they weren't assigned to the wing, we had a condition where it was in their best interest to pretend like it was, and it was good for us, so we called it Friend Con, was our command chain, but they were great partners and great teammates in all that we did. And then we also did personnel recovery or combat search and rescue with the HH-60 and parachute rescueman team. And then because we were responsible for those airfields, we did security and operations of the airfield. We had a detachment of security forces airmen and an operational support squadron that ran the airfield. And then there were airmen spread around the country doing joint expeditionary taskings. We called them jet airmen. And we stood up a group to manage them as well, an air operations group, while we were there.